Good evening and welcome to Season 1, Episode 5 of the Theatre of Pies podcast. I'm Laurie and I'm joined by my usual co-host Martin Wall, while Stephen is away in Ireland. But tonight we are not alone. We're getting down with the data. There's no game to review as such for the men's team, but there's plenty of stats to talk about. We all know how much Martin loves a stat, but we think we've found someone who loves the stats even more. If you're on the X, where you may well be watching us right now, of course, we're now on YouTube and Facebook as well. Give us all the likes and follows that you can. We're going to be joined tonight by Callum, who is the man behind KillieData over on the X. But before we bring him in, just Martin, how are you this evening?
Not bad. I was just smiling at that introduction. You've absolutely smashed it again. I think I'm just going to take a back seat for the rest of the season here and enjoy the ride. But no, I'm all good. I've been busy painting today. I'm in a room which is smelling lovely. Yeah, but apart from that, it's not been bad. It's actually nice to have a break from the football because it's been absolute gung ho the last few weeks. So yeah, but looking forward to getting back to it next week and looking forward to obviously chatting to our guest as well, who, as you mentioned, is the KillieData.
Yeah, absolutely, Martin. The Killie free weekend in many ways has been quite nice, but the thing about it being gung ho, we can probably actually prove that. So, Callum, first and foremost, just a bit of an introduction to yourself and the page that you do for anyone who maybe isn't following it yet.
Yeah, of course. Listen, first of all, thanks very much for having me on, guys. And Martin, if you've enjoyed a week without the football, then I think you're in for the next few weeks. I think we've got 6 games in the next three weeks or something like that. I think coming up, so it's going to be a busy time for all us Kelly fans. Yeah, so I mean, I've been a Kelly fan since I was a wee boy. I looked up earlier on today, 1990, 15 September 1990 was my first trip to Rugby Park, and I've been hooked ever since. I've been in and out of it at different times. I played a lot of football on Saturday afternoons myself for a while, so there was times, that I wasn't able to go to as many games as I would have liked. But I've always kind of the first thing I would do is look for the Kelly result after the match. And since I had kids myself, I've got two young boys, and since about 2021, the three of us became season ticket holders together. So I started getting really back into it again. In terms of the numbers and the stats side of things, that's just a kind of personal interest of myself. I did a degree in that, and I'm actually a maths teacher, so that's my background. So I don't know if any of you watching this might have been taught by me at some point and think, oh, what the hell's he doing on there? But just combining my kind of love of that with football, and obviously the increase in data in football, I've become kind of quite obsessed by it, and I wanted to kind of relate that and bring something to the sort of Kelly discussion, I guess, in social media about it, and hopefully I've managed to do that.
Yeah, I think you certainly have. I really enjoy the page. It's probably one of the ones I look out for, and when there's been a game, and there's going to be some crazy stats chucked about, that you're going to be on there. If it's not me, it's you, and it's great comparing them. Some of the stats as well, I always say, tells you a story of what you're watching. Some of it can be maybe a bit of fluff and not required, but there is some good stats out there, and we can obviously go into that later. But it's interesting how you say you take your kids along now. It's something that I enjoy myself, and yeah, it's a great family club, isn't it, Callum?
Oh yeah, it is absolutely. It's fantastic. We sit in the Moffat stand and have done for the last few years. So we do the family. I've got a friend who's got young kids as well, so we do the family season ticket. And it's great value for money when you compare how many games you're getting to and for the cost by comparison to what other people are paying. So yeah, it's just a great experience. And my eldest son, certainly, he's probably more Kelly daft than even I am. He absolutely loves it. And it's just great. I've got memories of going to the games when I was younger with my own dad, so it's great to kind of bring that to my own kids. So yeah, it's definitely something we look forward to, and we'll look forward to the games next week already.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like, I mean, ever since you've been, a season ticket holder with your kids, there's been plenty of change, from within the club at that time, whether it be in the championship, then a year where it looked like a real struggle when we first got back up, and then somehow getting ourselves into Europe, and then a very inconsistent season, and then a really poor one last season, at least that's how it looks to the eye. But so even in those years, we've pretty much seen it all, and I think that probably reflects in the data as well, because I think sometimes we'll kind of certainly underperformed to what we're expected to, but other times we've probably outperformed it, because I suspect in that European season, without looking at all the stats in detail, I suspect we were maybe little outliers in certain areas, because, I mean, we all know how poor the away form was, and I'm sure, Callum, you'll have done plenty on that at times as well. Even in that European season, we were still pretty poor away from home, not to be negative, but it's just the way we were. So, I mean, stats are very much fickle in football, as you said, Martin. Sometimes tell a story, but sometimes there's really a red herring. So, how on earth, especially in the heat of a Saturday night after a game, how on earth do you have the kind of balance and separate yourself between the kind of angry fan and the switched on statistician? Because it's something that we all need to learn, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because you get caught up in the emotion of the match. You definitely do, but I think there's a bit of a disconnect between what managers are looking for, in terms of when they're coaching players, and then what fans have actually seen on the pitch. I know this is obviously a Kelly podcast, but I found the interviews yesterday fascinating after the Dundee derby. I don't know if you listened to the two managers. So Stephen
Yeah.
Pressley, having won at Tannadice, came out and said that he was delighted with the result but not happy with the process. And then Jim Goodwin, actually, hold on, I made a note it here, I'll tell you what he said. I'll find it in a wee second. So basically, he came out and said that he was happy with, and listed all these things about entries into the box and stuff like that when his team have just lost 2-0 to Dundee. And I looked it up on X, I looked for the video, and I searched Jim Goodwin, and underneath it was a post. The first one that came up was one of the fans saying, rather than sitting looking at laptops, we need scouts out and about watching players. So it's really interesting because you've got people who are running football clubs, you've got people who are coaching teams, and they're looking at something that's completely different from what us fans are looking for when we're sitting in the stadium. And I'm not. I do love my XG stats. I'm not sad enough to be excited if we win the XG battle. I'd rather get the 3 points on the park, but I do find that really interesting because it does tell a big story that I think a lot of the fans don't often see.
Yeah, I think going into the XG and that, it's an interesting one. It's obviously, the higher the XG, the bigger the chances, and I think it always shows a story as well as if the strikers are getting in the right places. And it's just sometimes I think there was an example that me and Neil used, was Ollie Shaw was a prime example where he would have a high XG, but his finishing was just not there. But Partey was like, he's getting in the right areas. So you could look at the XG in different ways, but yeah, I like Hearts' model, the Jamestown model they use. I mean, look at the players they've got in, and they're sold on quickly. And obviously, they use the different types of stats and models as well that, gets players that you probably wouldn't expect to get from other leagues as well. So there is different ways of going about getting players and looking at stats as well. And yeah, I think there's a good use of stats in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Hearts one's going to be fascinating over the next few years. I think a lot of people are maybe not quite ready for what Hearts are going to try and achieve in the Scottish Premiership. But if you look at what this guy's done at the teams he's been at before, it might not be this season. They might not contend the way they did last year. But I think in time, I think that they will. And I don't know if people are quite prepared for that yet. But the backing that this guy has and what he's done previously shows that the model works. It's interesting though that in terms of looking at the Jamestown teams, you feel like there might be a bit of a ceiling on it. I think Hearts is a perfect size club for them. I don't know that it works, as well at the bigger clubs, because if you're in the English Premier League, for example, it's really, really difficult to then take that next step. Even though Brighton have done amazing, they're not challenging for the title and never have so far anyway. So it's really interesting. But I think Hearts is a good sized team for them, and it'll be really we'll see where it goes over the next few years. But
Yeah,
just so I don't go worry.
I was just saying that is something I wonder about the whole glass ceiling effect, excuse me, because I think as well, as you mentioned Hearts, but look at, and it's come up in the Scottish media a lot over the past week or so, of course, Union and Sanjo Wa as well, who's obviously in that mould, and obviously, the previous manager, the man who won on that title, was now going to be in the Scotland dugout, and was it not the first title in something crazy, like, was it not like 80 or 90 odd years, was it, and that was their first title, and like a lot of that shows the kind of value of these stats. But I'm going to use a word that was used by one of the SFA chiefs. That was Craig Mulholland that used it, and indeed Jim Goodwin used it last night. Metrics. It's all about these metrics and these figures, and But the thing is, every single person you allude to at the moment, though, Callum, is looking in their own mind for a different set of metrics and ultimately a different set of ideals. Because you've got, well, Stephen Presley in Dundee, who you said was quite disappointed at how his game plan didn't pan out. And then you've got, well, Jim Goodwin almost trying to hide behind the stats in some ways, you could argue. Maybe speaking a bit journalistically there, but I kind of think that's something that I hope we don't do that. I kind of put my neck on the line here. I could see a scenario whereby, say, there's a game where Killie do win the XG battle or whatever. I could see Neil McCann, for example, using it as something to hide behind a little bit. And that's something that as fans need to be aware of, because you don't want a manager to use it to almost bamboozle supporters. But as a fan, you really want to be aware of what these stats mean. And I think that's why it's important with you doing what you do. There's an education piece to it. I mean, you said at the top of the show being a teacher, so you'll kind of understand how to kind of go about that without going in over people's heads.
Yeah, I mean, I do my best. I don't know if I sometimes always get it right, but no, you're spot on. And I think it brings me back to another thing that frustrates me about being a football fan in terms of other fans want results instantly. And I can understand that because whilst I love the numbers and I love the stats, you want your team to win when you go to the football on a Saturday, and it's frustrating when you don't. But I think what fans need to realise a wee bit more is there's a process involved, particularly at a team like Kilmarnock. When you think about the place that we're in when Neil McCann took over, so he said, if you ignore the League Cup group stage, he's had 21 matches in charge of significance, against sort of top level opposition. It's a very short time. We've had some success in that. We've struggled at the start of this season, but you go on the Facebook page and you start to see a few people saying sack him and all this sort of stuff. They've got to be given time, and I think whilst it doesn't come across well when managers try and hide behind that, I think in interviews, as you say, that there is a bit of truth in it as well. Because if you're making those chances, then the law of averages says that they will start to click, unless, of course, your striker's always showing, he just can't put the ball in the net. But generally speaking, that's the way you're sort of trending if your numbers are looking good. So it just sometimes takes a bit more time than fans are willing to give.
It's interesting with stats because sometimes stats can also be a false figure with XG. So I'll give you an example. Bruce Anderson was a very good penalty taker, but his finishing wise, if you took the penalties out of the equation, he probably wasn't maybe as clinical as what it would suggest. One player of an ex-player of ours who scored a double yesterday and is doing fantastic in Romania. The mind boggles over how many bigger teams have and even the Scottish national team have basically looked their nose down on Danny Armstrong. His numbers are consistent. The chances created are up there. He's just. I just don't understand it, Callum. I'm surprised that someone like a Hearts with their model didn't go for him, or even Rangers, crying out for good wingers on the cheap as well. Obviously they like to spend a lot of money, but do you feel as though Danny Armstrong's a prime example of someone that just they do get their nose turned down on because they're Scottish?
Yeah, I mean, when Armstrong left Kelly, I was really disappointed. Obviously, he was a huge part of the first couple of seasons back up in the Premier League. And I don't know. I was surprised when he went to Romania. I felt like somebody else would have taken a chance on him, as you've just mentioned there. I guess his last season with us, his numbers did drop off a bit. He kind of picked up a wee bit towards the end of the season and got a couple of vital goals to pull us away from the playoff, But I wonder if he'd kept up the form of the season before, if he would have got a bigger move. But there's definitely a good player in there. I mean, again, it's not a Rangers podcast, but you could see the link with McInnes. You could see him going there, and he could definitely do a job for them. I think, he's a good player.
Yeah,
I think
really pleased to see him continue
quickly
that.
on Danny. It's just I think, and someone said it on the X earlier. I can't credit them, unfortunately. I can't remember who it was, but it's like Danny's real chance in a Scotland squad looks like Euro 24, and for some reason Clark didn't pick him. But you wonder again whether there'll be a change in style with it's Scotland with a new manager, which sounds like there will be. You wonder whether there is more of a place for him. But again, he's unfortunately not a player anymore. Although he does seem to be a guy who's still very much engage with what goes on at Killie, which is nice to see. But I think just looking at what we are doing as a club at the moment, and obviously where we are at the minute, I think let's get the obvious stuff out the way. We're a few games in, yet to be able to pick up a first point. It's not really worth hitting the panic button over yet, is it? But like it seems like right now where people will be like you get kind of almost naysayers. You mentioned maybe some of the Facebook pages, you go a bit reactionary and start going, oh, heal no day as the kind of as it always used to be. But it's very much it's hard to make sense of Kelly so far this season. I don't know if Callum you could do it at this point 'cause it's all very much gung ho, attack, 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 and well, what on earth do we do going back the way? And we always knew last season this was the case, but it seems to feel different in these first few games. I don't know whether that's just maybe your brain playing tricks on you though.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I looked up a wee stat for you earlier on about the teams that have lost their first two matches in the Premiership over the last few years. So last season we had Aberdeen and they lost the first two and finished ninth. The season before, Hibs and Killie lost the first two, finished third and ninth. Season before that, Hibs and St Johnstone, they finished 8th and 10th. St Mirren and Ross County in 22-23, they finished 6th and 11th, but Ross County won the playoffs, so they stayed up. And Livy back in 21-22, so they finished 7th. So the last time that a team lost their first two games in the Premiership and actually got relegated was Hamilton in 2020-21. So it's not the end of the world. Like losing the first two games of the season doesn't confine you to relegation. It's clear that actually, in actual fact, not many of the teams were fighting for Europe apart from Hibs back in sort of what was that 24-25. But maybe we will be a bottom 16, but that's where we are at the moment. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be in a relegation battle. In terms of what I see on the park, it's interesting. I think the change, there's been a lot of talk about the diamond in terms of the change of formation. Actually, in most of McCann's games last season, he started with two strikers and he started with a four-man midfield. I think the difference is that we had Curtis last year as well. So he had the two strikers and then he had Curtis, which gave us a lot of width. And what that meant was that the fullbacks maybe didn't need to bomb on as much. Whereas what we're seeing this season is because we don't have that natural width in the team. I think he maybe tried to create it in the air game by bringing Klushenko in, but the midfield four are playing in this diamond and it is narrow. So what he's doing is he's sending the fullbacks for bombing on basically. But what that means then is when we lose possession, that they're further up the park. So I feel like, if that makes sense, that's kind of how I'm seeing it. It's a kind of transitional period, and I think
Totally.
basically what's happening is they just need to adjust to that sort of change in system and work out when's the right time to go and when's it not. And I think that takes a bit of time. He's brought in a lot of new players, some of whom we haven't even seen on the pitch yet. So I think we just need to give it a wee bit of time to bed in, and hopefully this 2 weeks in the training pitch will help them get into the double header.
Yeah, I think I'd say I agree on a lot of your stuff there, Callum, because there is a lot of exciting players there. We've got a better squad overall than this time last year, and even when the end of the season finished. I think, like you say, it's just about getting them synced together. I still feel as though we're missing that one player at the back, that experienced centre back that can just knit everything together, and just that sort of know-how in certain games. I think the only thing can really be critical of McCann is obviously the Celtic game is how we were a bit too open, and we didn't change it sooner. But it's exciting. I mean, he's changed the philosophy, the identity of how we play, and it's like you say, just giving it time. We've got really good players on the pitch. We've probably got a lot of money on the pitch in terms of value as well to sell on, and a lot of players that were maybe not playing well under Catterwell and were out the fringes. Tom Laurie is a prime example, has come into his own and is probably one of those players you wouldn't drop now because he's so vital in that midfield. So there is a lot of things to look forward to. We look like we're a threat every time we go forward, but I think it's just getting that fine balance in games and defensively being switched on and sorting that out. And we've got to see these new players that have come in as well. So I'm with you. It's frustrating, but teams have had starts like this before. Like you said, you've proven on the stats
Proven it.
given. But I always think of Falkirk last season. They really slow. I think they lost away at Falkirk in their second. Away at Olivia in their second game.
Olivia.
And we all know how those two seasons ended up. So I don't think the season's won or lost in the first few weeks of the season. I mean, the year we got to Europe as well, we beat Rangers and then we went 7 games without a win. And then I think we didn't really kick on till December. So, 100% Callum behind what you say there. I totally agree with that.
I think there's a bit that you mentioned there a wee bit there in terms of the amount of value that we've got on the pitch as well. People overlook that. Kilmarnock have to be in a position, we've talked about the data-led teams already, they have to be in a position where they're looking to make profit on players. And if you think about the sort of style and formation and system that McCann's adopting, if you compare that to the way we played under McInnes, if you put Michael Schoen Larson, I think he's a perfect example. I would be surprised if this time next year he's a Kilmarnock player. He'll go into somewhere and we'll get some money for him because he's an exceptional talent. But if you put him into a Derek McInnes team and made him play left back the way Derek McInnes plays, he wouldn't have the same value. He wouldn't stand out the same. Joe Hugo, if you put him up front and made him play like Kyle Vassell played up front in the Derek McInnes team, he wouldn't have the same value. So there's a lot of different things go into it. Yes, we want results on the pitch. Yes, ultimately that's the thing that matters most. And of course, we don't want to be in a relegation battle. We'd far prefer to be pushing up the table. But the style of play, if he can get it right, actually benefits the club as well as hopefully the results on the pitch as well.
Yeah, and he talks about flexibility, Laurie and Callum, in the players. And I think that's what we've got a lot of as well. I mean, even last season, you mentioned about Curtis and how he started at right back some games. And then at half time, he would switch him over to the left on the wing. And then all of a sudden, we would look completely different as well at times. So he was always trying different things to make us look attacking. I mean, I'm sure Curtis started the game at right back against St Mirren and a crazy game of football, but we ended up winning because we just outfought him in attack, and I suppose that's McCann's philosophy, a bit like, Kevin Keegan, God rest his soul, but that's the way his philosophy was, at Newcastle, and that, if they score 3, we'll score 4.
That game, sorry, Laurie, I was just going to say that game is one of my favourite stats on last season. I think Curtis was at 10 shots he had from right back. Yeah. So I don't know if it was a traditional right back he was playing that night.
Nah, I don't know. I don't know how quite traditional right back, but it was entertaining anyway. But that's the thing. Like, I mean, I actually quite like Neil McCann's style. To be clear, yes, we've said some things on here, maybe criticising the diamond formation or whatever. But I quite like the attacking style. It's back to like what everyone was saying about the Ayrshire Derby a few weeks ago. Of like, yes, maybe for us it was a little bit close for comfort, but like, if you are a kind of neutral party in this, say you were, I don't know, even say an Aberdeen fan, also have got them in the draw then, right? You were watching that more neutrally and thinking, this is a great game of football, But when you're in Rugby Park, kind of nail biting with it is a different battle. But I think like his style had to be commended because a lot of people criticise the way Derek McInnes, for example, played. Yes, he is effective, quote unquote, but it wasn't pretty football. The question is, and everyone gets a different answer, would you rather be effective or boring and win, or have a good game of football and then occasionally ship some goals and maybe not always get it back? And and obviously your gut instinct might be I want to win, but like we all know what people's reaction was. Whoever was sitting around about in the stadium, we always knew what people's reaction was to like certain types of, particularly Derek McInnes football. Like some people just didn't appreciate it at all, even when we were fighting for Europe. So it's what do you want? It's kind of a style over substance debate, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think under McInnes, listen, by the way, maybe sounds as if I'm being quite critical on McInnes. I'm not. He did a great job for Kilmarnock. I just feel it was a bit tunnel vision in terms of the way the club was being run at that time. McInnes was in charge. McInnes decided everything, and all he was focused on was getting results on the park. And yeah, he did that to some extent. And obviously, the season we finished 4th and getting to Europe was terrific. But I don't think it was sustainable. Whereas I feel more now that what they're trying to do with the club in terms of the players they're bringing in, the style that they're adopting, I think that's more sustainable to benefiting the club long term. It comes with a caveat that you have to get that right on the pitch. But I think we've seen enough from McCann last season and towards the end of the season, certainly to give me confidence that he can do that with a bit of time. The one other thing just to mention on the formation, when I was looking back through the sort of lineups, as I say, most of the time last season he started with two up top, but I think it had changed depending on the game. So there was 5 away games where they played one striker. It was away to Dundee United, away to Hibs, away to Aberdeen, and away to St Mirren, and they played a more sort of 4-5-1 formation. So I think he's got that in him, and I think we might see that again. Certainly, maybe in some of the away games that we've got coming up. I think what he's done in the first couple of games is he's fought right St Johnstone, or we should be able to go out and beat them, and obviously we didn't. He's then fought home to Celtic. I think they could be vulnerable. I think we're going to go for this. And then here, obviously, the league below, so we should be going out looking to go out and attack. So we've not really had a game yet where we've went away from home, to maybe a Motherwell or somewhere like that, where you're looking at it and you're going, yeah, we maybe need to be a wee bit more pragmatic today. And I think we might see that coming back in. In terms of those 5 games that I've referenced there, sorry, I think I said away to Livy as well. I missed that last game of the season as well. In terms of those 5 games, they actually took 7 points from those 5 games, which doesn't sound great. But given our away record in terms of how it's been the last few years, at 1.4 points per game, that's not bad shooting. And we actually only took 8 points from the other 14 away matches in the whole of the season last year. So, we took half of the points in those 5 matches, playing a 4-5-1. So I think we'll see it again. I think he's just went a wee bit too attacking in the first 2 games, St Johnstone and Celtic. And I think we'll see that back in.
Aye, I think that's very much an important point, Callum, and it's one that, who knows, if it turned out to be wrong, both of us could be getting clipped up here, but I kind of think that's one thing. People have been calling, Neil McCann, stubborn or dogmatic, but you've just proved that he's not. I mean, I think whenever I think of a stubborn manager like that with one style, I just think of Ange Postecoglou, really, and he's not that. He's not as just he's not as single-minded as that. And I'm not saying he's a bad manager. Goodness, I'm just saying he's mechanically willing to change and adapt to what's actually around him. Even the St Mirren away game that you mentioned. I mean, right at the end of the season, massive for securing our safety. He knew the priority in that game was just effectively win at all costs, even though our away record is pretty troublesome. But I kind of wonder, obviously, if circumstances were different, I think we'd have maybe seen some of the pragmatism this weekend had we actually played Hibs. I reckon you would see it there because, obviously, I mean, as stats and away records go, I mean, Easter Road's up there one of the worst. 2014 was our last win there?
Yeah, it's come at a good time, not. Yeah, sorry, Callum.
No, you're fine. I was just agreeing with Laurie. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
But I think there's different ways to win football, as we've already mentioned. And to be honest, I'm with you, Laurie. I'd rather watch Neil McCann side any day over Derek McInnes, and Derek McInnes got us to Europe, and so again, you don't want to sort of slate what he's done, but in terms, it's an entertainment game, and you want to see goals, you want to see excitement, you want to get off your seat, and I feel like we're getting a lot more of that off McCann already. And I think we've got to remember as well, looking at see if you look at that squad, as I've already mentioned, it's full of decent players. Just need to gel together. We've got to remember as well that he's probably not playing what he wants to play in terms of his strongest team, because you're not telling me Mark O'Hara is sitting on the bench the whole season. I feel there's players there he wants to play. We haven't seen players like Matherin, I think, a brief appearance against St Johnstone away, who I actually thought looked quite bright, trying to take on his men, trying to get out wide, get crosses in when he could. So you've also got Gennaro Daniels to come into the frame, if maybe our strikers aren't on form. So I think there's plenty of competition in most places. Like I say, that experienced centre-back is probably that's missing, but he hasn't had the ability to play his best defence yet, with Robbie D's been suspended for the first 2 league games. Then you've got this German that's come in that's not fully fit. So there's a lot of pieces to the jigsaw yet to be completed. And I feel, Callum, you're right in what you're saying, that maybe during the course of the season, we'll see a stronger team. And it's a bit like how when Neil McCann first came in and we went to Livy away, drew, then got hammered at Motherwell, didn't really get going, and then it started to click a few games in. Couple of setbacks, but then he would always have that ability to maybe change that formation. And I think it was after Falkirk away, you're thinking, God, we're doomed, and then bang, we go and beat Hearts, 1-0. So he has got the ability to pull a big result out of the bag. He's got the ability to change things, and I do believe that we've got a better squad than last season under McCann already. So I'm not worried. I'm just excited to see what his best team is.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Martin. There's one thing though, I mean, obviously I've been very positive about him, and I don't want to come across as just being a happy clapper on here, and saying everything's wonderful and all get behind the can, which I think we should. But the one thing that he has to work on is conceding early goals.
100%.
Looking back through the numbers, it's atrocious.
I dread to hear these, God.
Let's not.
Yeah,
go on, Callum. The floor is yours.
You've got me on, so I looked into this. So, as I said earlier on, McCann's been in charge for 21 games, right? So I looked at that as a sample size and compared it to the previous 21 games, right? So that was under Kettlewell and Dillon, and we all know how awful we were back then, right? So we're comparing the two 21 games. So in those 21 games under McCann, we've conceded the first goal 12 times, and under Kettlewell and Dillon it was 11 times. So actually, even though things have got better under McCann, we're still conceding the first goal more often than we were under those two. Then if you conceded in the first 10 minutes, so first 10 minutes of a match, we've conceded 7 times out of 21 under McCann, and that was only actually 2 times out of 21 under Kettlewell and Dillon. So it's ballooned massively since McCann's been in charge. And then if you extend that to the first 25 minutes, we've conceded 11 times. So more than 50% of the matches we've played under McCann, we've conceded in the first 25 minutes. And that was only 7 times under Kettlewell and Dillon. So he has to be looking at that, and we have to do something about it.
Well, you think of 2 examples. You get a good result under McCann or a good performance, and then you go to Falkirk away, you're 2-0 down early doors, 3-0 down at half time. I think they had a goal disallowed in like the 3rd minute as well, which could have made it 2-0.
Yep.
It did,
Hibs 2-0 down inside 12 minutes. The game's gone, man. It is. It just totally zaps any energy in the away end as well. The players must feel it. The managers must know it. So you're right. And, at the end of the day, we can all praise McCann and Dodds and that for what they've done. But they have to get better. And I'm sure, they don't need us to tell them that. But they have to do something, because there's going to come a time where we're not going to be able to catch up. We're going to run out of games, or we're just going to hit a bad form and that. So we do need to sort that out and strike a good balance. So yeah, it's a very good point to make.
Yeah, and it's just, and we all kind of had an idea just how much of a vice or a bad habit that we've got of conceding those early goals. But the comparison to the Kettlewell and Dolan era is actually quite stark, because you have this like false memory, and I don't think I'm the only one who has this, where you thought it was maybe the same under him, but no, like, because you've got to think there was a spell under Kettlewell, dare I say it, where we actually looked pretty decent defensively and we weren't really conceding for a spell before things turned sour. But like, I do just wonder what goes on defensively. Is it lack of quality? Is it just lack of concentration, lack of depth, all of the above? Like what on earth is it? I mean, Martin, you've said earlier in the show that you kind of think the missing piece of the puzzle is that experienced centre half.
Yeah.
And then and obviously we got the guy in earlier in the week that we'll get to later on. And I think as well, good news for us all, I think, the German fullback, Johnny Meyer, might be playing sooner than you think, because he and, Gennaro Daniel as well for that matter, appear to be playing in some sort of bounce game the other day. I mean, to be fair, you never actually saw anything other than those players and the yellow away kit. You never actually saw, if they were playing against teammates or who they were playing against, but they had some sort of game the other day.
Yeah, well, I mean, just going, I suppose, have you got any other data there, Callum, you want to share with us before we move on to like looking at the Dundee United game at the weekend?
Nothing specific, I don't think. The only thing I was going to say on the defenders is that I think it's probably a simple tweak from McCann. Like, we've talked earlier on in the programme about how everybody bombs forward in terms of the start, but it's as simple probably as saying, like, there's times that we play that way and there's times that we don't. And let's just play our way into the game. You know, first 10 minutes, both fullbacks don't have to fire forward immediately. And that's maybe a really simplistic way. I've never played football at that level. I've certainly never been a coach. So maybe I'm oversimplifying it. But I feel like maybe just playing your way into the game. Don't go all gung ho first 10 minutes. Let's wait until we play our way in, as I say, and can I get a wee bit of momentum behind us? Might be enough to make the difference there, you know. Even though obviously if we could get that goal, the centre back, I think we would all be desperate for them, wouldn't we?
There's just a couple of questions really. First one is, obviously you see this style now with a lot of teams, like from your Man Cities to your, to your Kilmarnocks, I suppose, but they want to play with the keeper from the back to the full-backs, the defence. There's a lot of tippy-tappy sometimes. And I think we've been makers of our own downfall with the goals early doors, because this is where we get caught in possession. The teams learn this, press us, and nick the ball off us. And I mean, the example was Brandon, in the Ayrshire derby. The same happened with Brandon. I don't want to pick on him, but unfortunately, this is how it happened. And they've seen that weakness. Surely, I mean, if we're seeing that as fans, McCann's got to be seeing that, because that's really where the goals are coming from. And Stephen, who's on here every week, says about how majority of our goals we give away, a lot of the time, are down to our own making as well. Do you feel that sometimes it's just a case of less of the football at the back? Because I think Max Strike has also suffered with confidence. Would you agree on that, Callum?
Yeah, definitely. I was thinking back to the first time I ever saw him play for Kelly was the Livy game in the League Cup at the start of last season. So I vaguely remembered him. I think he was obviously at Livingston before, and then I saw him coming in. And I remember watching him that night and thinking, oh, I like the look of this guy. He was super confident. He was coming for crosses. He was taking things in the air, taking the pressure off the defence. And I was like, yeah, he'll do it for me. And obviously he was excellent for his last season. But this season he seems absolutely rooted to his line. So I don't know what the difference there is, but the St Johnstone game was, I think was it 3 goals we conceded from cross balls, and he's not taking a step off his line for any of them. So I don't know why that's changed. I don't think it's a tactical thing. I think it must just be as simple as what you said there, that it's a wee bit of lack of confidence. So a number of things goes into it, but yeah. And then I think probably with Brandon, you've mentioned him, rather than, we don't want to just dig him out, but it probably is the case that he's been caught out once and then his confidence starts to dip. And I think hopefully the sooner this German boy's fit, the better. Maybe give him a wee break. And because I do like Brandon, I think there's definitely a player in there. He's maybe just not playing at his best at the moment.
I agree on that. I think
Totally.
the thing what I've noticed though is this St Johnstone game, that Max got caught out with the pass of a short ball to a centre back and got away with it. He then done the same against Celtic, and obviously, no disrespect to Max, he may as well just turn around and put it in himself. And for me, that's what, and that's not a slate on Max at all, because Max is a very good goalkeeper, but because of these lapses of concentration, there may be the way we're trying to play it out the back a bit more from the keeper. It's putting him under pressure and then puts his confidence down with that. I just feel as though sometimes Strike just needs to do what he's good at, get rid of the ball, because he's got a good kick on him. He's a good shot stopper, and he was, up until this season, good in the air. I feel as though McCann has maybe tried to play it a bit too much at times. I know he talks about wanting his players to be a bit safe and take that risky pass, but I mean, come on, there's risky and I think sometimes it's just a case of getting rid.
Yeah, the one thing I would say about the goal against Celtic was he would rather he did that when we were 3-0 down against Celtic than at a time that actually mattered. The game was over at that point, but it was horrendous to watch. And you hope that doesn't happen. But I hope, what I'm hoping, I'm trying to be positive, is that this is just a sort of transition period for the players getting used to this new style. You think about the sort of comparison to Motherwell and some of the defenders that they had with Stephen O'Donnell. I mean, he's a good player. He was excellent for Kelly, did a good job for Scotland as well, but he was never a technical, silky fullback, and he's played that role well for Motherwell, So these players are good. They're talented. They're maybe just having to train and adapt to playing a different way, and hopefully that's going to take a bit of time. But I think what we have to accept, and hopefully it's not too often, it's Max Stryjek just passing the ball straight to their striker, but what we have to accept is that there's going to be times where we give the ball away. It just seems right now that we're getting punished every time we do it. And that's the other thing that they have to look at defensively, I think, in terms of, there'll be slack passes, but how do we react to that?
I think that's a fair reflection, in fairness, because we were asking to play better football, or you want us to play better football. Every football fan across the country wants that, I suppose. Obviously, they want the results as well, but you can see the philosophies there, McCann. I suppose it is about being patient as well, but like you said, we are just getting we're getting punished, and that's probably what highlights it more. And I think it's easy as a football fan, Laurie, you probably agree, and Callum, it's easy to criticise more than praise as well at times, I think, and it's tough at the minute for the players, but I think it's a results business, and I do believe that even though we weren't at our best in the Ayrshire Derby, the way that we finished that game and won it will certainly give the players a lift going into the game against Dundee United. Would you agree on that, Laurie and Callum?
Aye, totally. I think the Derby's got to give it a lift, and that's why. And we're talking about it in last week's episode, and I was talking about it on the radio as well. I think that's why Neil McCann got a little bit peeved off at Jonathan Sutherland, because Neil McCann is trying to kind of rebuild that feel good factor, remind everyone we just beat our rivals, etc. And I think we need to try and dine out on the positivity of the derby as much as we can without completely ripping it. Come on, but we need to just kind of make the most of that, because it is something that gives you confidence, even for some of the players who maybe haven't been here as long. Seeing Rugby Park like that must give them a lift as well.
Yeah, definitely. Callum, thoughts on last Friday quickly before we move on as well?
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed the game. I mean, it was a fantastic spectacle, and I thought Ayr United played well, and I thought we played some terrific football as well, and eventually wore them down. We got slightly fortunate in terms of 2-2. They could have went 3-2 up, and obviously they don't take the chance, and then we get the winner. But the standard of goals from all 5 goals, I mean, I don't think they publish XG data in League Cup ties, so I've not been able to get that, but the XG would actually have been quite low from that match, I would imagine. There certainly wouldn't have been anywhere near 5 in total. But the standard of finishing, I think, shows the standard of player that was involved. Larson was excellent, Hugo was excellent, Koshenko's finish was brilliant as well. So just a brilliant night, brilliant game of football. And obviously, you would have been absolutely devastated if we hadn't come out on top, and that enhances your enjoyment. But I sat back and enjoyed the match for 90 minutes. I genuinely did. Maybe more so when we were winning than losing, but it was just a great game of football.
I think the atmosphere really helped that game, and even a week or so on, just that feeling that, because if you'd lost that, then it would have been a killer, waiting for your next match, But I think because we won that game, I wasn't too fussed that we weren't playing this weekend. It sort of gave me a time to sort of calm down a bit after the excitement of the end of that game. But it was one thing I forgot to mention last week, and I don't know if you noticed it, Callum, was obviously Owen, quite a rapid player, quite a good player for the future as well. But when I look back at the second goal, to see the way he, because I was trying to work out why Sean and Larson had so much space to run into and shoot, but when you see it, Owen drags a defender out the way just by a simple run. And for someone, for me, he's going to be a big player going forward. What have you thought of him so far, Callum?
Yeah, I mean, we've obviously only seen bits and pieces of him, but he certainly is lively, and he's young and he looks hungry. So hopefully we can see more of him, and he'll be playing the game time and he'll kick on. But I think, more generally speaking, what's been really interesting is, so if we go back to the January window and the summer window, I don't really think, and forgive me if I'm forgetting something, you can correct me. I don't really think we've made a bad signing as yet. Obviously, there's one or two at the moment that we're not sure about, as you mentioned, the boy Matufin we've not seen much of, but I think everybody has done a job, and even the ones this summer. I think they look as if there's a few decent players there as well. So that's really positive moving forward.
Definitely, and I think that's one of these areas where, again, we kind of, before we move on to the United game, where we just see probably the use of data a lot more, because you notice Sam Morrow, the head of recruitment, to his credit, who of course Stuart Kettlewell helped bring in, he's clearly cast the net a little bit wider, and these are guys who a team like Kelly aren't going to literally send a scout to somebody's place abroad, right? So it is going to be a case of using all the technology to your disposal, whether that's Y Scout or whatever, or whatever they use on the transfer room now or whatnot. But a lot of that is down to stats and analytics and what they can read up on a player as well. So again, you're probably seeing a lot more of us, I imagine, using data a little bit there as well, being a little bit speculative, but I'm willing to put my neck on the line there. It's one of the things from us casting the net wider, probably, that are more data driven slightly.
Yeah, it certainly looks that way, and it's certainly so far it's been successful. So long may that continue. And yeah, as you say, Martin, I like the look of the Welsh boy, but there's plenty of competition for places. So you can't say for certain, he should be in the team, but I'm sure we'll see bits and pieces of him. Hopefully, when the time's right, and we'll see him have an impact.
Yeah. Just one thought going on the Ayrshire derby. I suppose this will link into the Dundee United game, but I'll ask that in a moment. But see, Greg Kiltie, obviously been a captain, and there's a lot of talk about the diamond formation. For me, Kiltie plays his best football in that diamond formation. Taking on the captaincy, seems to have thrived on that. Being local boy, sort of, he just continued from last season. Do you feel as though sometimes McCann is maybe not wanting to switch from that diamond now because of how crucial Kiltie is to the team and how well he's playing? Because I do feel as though if you don't play that diamond, Kiltie's not as effective.
I think it's not just Kiltie, it's also the two strikers as well, isn't it? Because he knows what he's got in John Jules and Hugo. He's got two excellent players. Yeah, we're not quite sure it's from John Jules yet, but we know what he's capable of. And Hugo, Hugo's been fantastic. I remember looking when we signed him, he'd scored one goal on loan at Barnet or something. And you're thinking, who's this guy? And he's been incredible. So I think it fits with those players. He just has to do a bit of tweaking round about it to get it to work and get the balance right. But as I said, I think there'll be times maybe where we won't see John Jules, for example, starting, but we'll see him coming off the bench. But that shows the strength of the squad. But yeah, I agree with you about Kiltie. I think playing off the striker's definitely been the best we've seen from him. Because I don't know he's got that pace to play out wide, but definitely behind the striker's excellent.
It's just even his stats in terms of goal contributions. He's just consistently in and about the goals and the assists at the minute, and the same with Tom Laurie, to be fair. I'm quite one for looking at the heat maps of players recently as well, and SofaScore's a good app that I use, and Tom Laurie is all over the place. And long may that continue. I've mentioned it already, but Laurie, shall we move on to the game on Saturday?
Yeah, let's go for it, because of course, as they say, it's United, as they say in a wee song at the start of their game at Tannadice. But I think Dundee United is going to be a tough one. I would think, but it feels a lot of people starting to hype it up already as like a massive game and all this. But I think, Callum, it goes back to what you said, earlier on. Like, nothing's won and lost after 2 league games. It's just not. But I mean, United have had a pretty poor start as well, so I think it is going to be a tough one to call, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Certainly our historical record should give us confidence. And I was looking ahead at the two matches that we've got coming up, 2 home games against 2 teams that, for whatever reason, we've got excellent records against, going back quite a few years now. And actually, I mean, how much can you look into historical data? How relevant is a match that we beat Dundee United in 2021 now? Not very. But what is relevant is, since McCann's been in charge, we've played 6 bottom half teams at home. So actually we've not had that many games like the next 2 that we've got coming up. What we would look at as being games that we should win at Rugby Park. And in those 6 matches, we've played 6, we've won 5 and drawn 1 of those 6 matches. In those games, we've scored 17 and conceded 6. and the expected goals isn't too far off, or maybe slightly overperforming. The expected goals we've scored for is 14 and against is 7. So our record against this type of team under McCann so far at Rugby Park has been excellent. So fingers crossed, here's hoping it continues.
Good stats. And
brilliant. That is really good like that, because it just proves something, that these games are almost your kind of bread and butter, that we should be targeting Dundee United, St Mirren, Dundee even. I know they've started well, but these are the games we should target. It's not about what we do against Celtic, for example, which appears to be the one that got everyone up in arms.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's interesting what you say, Callum, about records and does it really count? But I think it does, because if you're the Dundee United fan or the St Mirren fan, you're thinking exactly what we're thinking when we're going to Easter Road. So I think it does count, because and we do have a great record. So there's no reason why we should be going into those games as the home team anyway. And just with the attacking ability that we've got, we should be able to outscore them. At the end of the day, though, we all know football's not won on paper, and we have to obviously go into those games full of confidence. And I think the game last Friday will certainly help that. And I just think we just need to learn from our defensive mistakes and that. But Dundee United, to be fair, even though they lost 2-0 yesterday, they did look quite good on the attack. So I think that's what we just need to be mindful of, that they have still got the ability to cause us problems at the top end. But yeah, I'm confident of next week. Do you feel, though, there is going to be a change in the midfield? Mark O'Hara, I felt, really did change the game when he came on for Tish Bowler. Do you feel it's maybe a game where we just rest Tish Bowler, or do you feel as though he still deserves to start? What's your thoughts on how he started the season, Callum?
Well, I mean, how he ended last season was incredible. Like, there was times last season you were watching him going, he's too good for us. I can't believe we're watching this guy play. So if he can get back to those levels, then he should be in the team every week. He's not found it in the first 3 games of the season. He really hasn't. Just seems a wee bit slack, a bit casual. Maybe a fitness thing. Maybe coming back for the World Cup, having a bit of a sort of broken pre-season, that type of thing. I think he probably is somebody who needs a rest, but then he's had 2 weeks off between the 2 matches, so it'll be really interesting to see what McCann does. But yeah, I agree. O'Hara was absolutely excellent when he came on, and I think probably he's earned a start. But then the question is, who's that instead of? Does he go to 3 across the middle, 4-5-1, or does he stick with 4-4-2? In terms of my theory, that's 4-5-1, so we'll see away from home. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see. In terms of Dundee United, when I've watched them obviously quite a few times since we've been back up in the Premiership, and what Goodwin used to do certainly was he had a very high press. So that would be very interesting, and it would be interesting to see if he adopts that or not on Saturday, because if he presses us high, and obviously we are still susceptible to a few mistakes, that's where they could get a bit of joy against us. But he's kind of changed the system a wee bit over the last few games, certainly this season. He's tried to approach a more attacking system, which I know sounds a wee bit counterintuitive, because high press should be quite attacking, but it's difficult to do both, So he's changed the system, see if he presses as high. If he does, I'm a bit worried about that, and we'll need to certainly sharpen up in the middle of the park with passing, I think.
Interesting. If we're going to be playing Sean and Larson like higher up, as we do, and then obviously the both fullbacks, I just feel as though if Tish Bowler is playing, McCann needs to tell him just to maybe sit a bit more to protect those 2 centre backs. I feel as though sometimes he just drifts a bit too much up the top end of the pitch, and then that's where you lose that midfield battle as well, when they're like they can then get us on the counter. So it'd be interesting to see who he does play. I think he will keep a similar side, maybe 1 change, 2 changes at most. What's your thoughts, Laurie?
Yeah, I think he'll keep it quite consistent. And that's one thing that Neil McCann does tend to do. We're no longer seeing what we'd referred to in the past, our previous manager, as a Tom Bowler type system, to be fair. Because even after the Celtic game, it was only 1 change going into the derby, and a lot of managers would be tempted to bring the changes. McCann, stuck with his side, and fair play to him. I'm quite sure it was only John Leafeco out and then Robbie Dees to come in, and I think it will only be, minimal change again. But what you said about Tishbola, or what you both said about Aaron Tishbola is quite interesting. And Martin, you're saying you wonder if McCann might make him maybe sit a bit more and just be kind of there to protect the back line, but you wonder who that who that player playing that protective role will actually be. Is it Tishbola or is it Mark O'Hara, who I think between us all we've kind of come to a consensus that he needs to be playing somewhere. But as we've said, it's where do you find them? Because Tishbola is someone who's maybe flattered to see in a few games, but we know what he can bring. And as we said earlier on, Tom Lowry's pretty much on Roppel. It's almost if we do need to have that three-man midfield just for the sake of quality, but you don't want to sacrifice either of the front men. Catch 22.
It's interesting as well, Callum. You mentioned about how we talked about the diamond. There's a lot of talk about it, but then when you look at the players in there, that we think Neil McCann's not going to ever change it. But I suppose he has got the options in game to change it. So we've got good wingers in the building now. If he really wanted to change it and get us wider rather than that playing that diamond in the game. I mean, Klitschenko was quite effective, and he kept. I don't know if what you thought of Klitschenko's performance in that air game, but I know he scored the winner. He was really, really lacked confidence at times. But what I liked about him was he would never give up. He'd keep trying again and again and again. And it reminded me shades of like Danny Armstrong. What he would do, he'd always maybe give the ball away, but try again, and eventually got the winner. So again, it's all about confidence in these players that are coming into the team. And for me, I seen clips of Klitschenko last season. I thought, yeah, I like it what he does. So there is there is that option in game as well to change it if the diamond's not working.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, and I think Klitschenko looked good, and I actually did the exact same thought as you did. Watching him against the United, he did remind me of Danny Armstrong because he was quite often cutting back inside in his right foot. Cross was blocked, but he kept going and he kept trying, and obviously eventually he got the success. He moved over to the other side, and he seemed to be a bit better in the right wing as opposed to the left wing, but. So that shows his flexibility. But just to throw another spanner in the works, and a name we've not mentioned, it was Bailey Rice as well. Because Bailey Rice is a serious footballer, and he's not alone. I don't think he's not come to Kilmarnock alone to sit on a bench for this season. That this is a boy that was playing European games for Rangers not long over a year ago. He's had a rough time with injury, but there's a real player in there, and if McCann can get the best out of him as well, that's just another name that he's got to work out how to get in the team.
Yeah.
Interesting because there was a video I seen from a guy who was doing a TikTok video down in England, and he had no affiliation with Scottish football, and he just happened to watch the St Johnstone Kilmarnock game, as you do. Thought this is a great game of football, great advert for Scottish football, but he was singing praises of Bailey Rice. And I actually, when I reflect back on his video, it was interesting because he was saying about how he looked so calm and the ball looked assured, and he was looking for the pass, and there was comments saying, yeah, but he was giving the ball away. But I think that was because he was looking for that pass that maybe no one else in the midfield would do. And it's about, again, linking those players up to, because I always felt that with Polworth, that I thought Polworth, when he was on his game, and he was so inconsistent, but when he was on his game, he would look for that pass that no one else in the team could do. And sometimes it wouldn't pull off, but and people would easily pick up Polworth for giving the ball away. But I always felt as though sometimes it was a case of that player's just not read that pass. And I always feel that Bailey Rice is that type of player, and that's how he described him, that he was picking out these passes. And to be fair, I agree, Callum. I think that Bailey Rice is someone that if he can get a run of games, get that fitness going, you may not see it straight away. And going back to the Killie Trust meeting that I went to, there was a lot of that talk about trust the process, give him time, and he was talking about players like Klitschenko, uh, who was and Bailey Rice, and I think there's one or two others he was talking about. So it was interesting, really. Again, he was saying give him time, give him time. So I'm probably really excited to see this team kick on, end of October, beginning of November, because I feel as though this will be a completely different conversation.
Yeah, I certainly hope so, and I do see a lot of positives. I mean, you've mentioned Polworth there, and Polworth's a great player for Kelly, he really was. But now, when you look at the options we've got in midfield, if you take those four in terms of Laurie, Tishbola, Rice, and O'Hara, I mean, Polworth doesn't get a look in, but
That's an upgrade.
he was a player who was playing and contributing. You know, when we were finishing fourth in the league. So I'm not saying that means that we're going to go on and compete for Europe. I don't think that's going to happen, because I do actually think the leagues get stronger. But it shows you where we are. We just need to give it a bit of time to click, and hopefully I'm right. Hopefully my positivity plays through, and McCann and Dodds do the business for us.
And it's great. It's great to have that positivity, like you say, but you've always got to side on that caution of how we play as well. And I suppose you've got to be a bit of an open book when it comes to Neil McCann, because we are going to have those shockers where we are just going to ship goals, and I suppose that comes with the nature of how we play. But it's about that fine balance of, like, what do you want? Do you want exciting football and win games? And I think Monty on the Niver podcast and Forever and Ever goes about how we're going to score 66 and concede 66 this season. So I don't think we'll be far off that, Laurie.
Aye.
So,
No, I really don't. But I think moving on to obviously the game itself, obviously, Callum, you quite rightly pointed out the very good record we've got against Dundee United. I can only think of maybe one particularly bad game against them away at Tannadice. That's something I can think of, like, from a couple of years ago on the Dale when he made subs in the first half. But generally speaking, we do rather well there, and we've got to kind of go into it with confidence. I think I always feel like, as a fan, Dundee United are a hard team to actually gauge, because a lot of the players, and this is to Jim Goodwin's credit, aren't maybe as well known to at least to your typical Scottish football fan. I'm not going to accuse coaches of that, but like, from a fan's perspective, I always feel with United, there's a bit of unknown quantity. Of course, the media are picking up on it now, the lack of Scotsmen in the team, whatever. But then, arguably, we're the same. We're getting more diverse as well, and that's great. But there's almost an unknown quantity element to that, isn't there?
Yeah, no, there definitely is, and they've brought quite a lot of new faces in. They do that every year. They've brought a few Australians, and I think they've got is it three
Australians,
Australians?
aye. I think
Both.
I think there's at least three, and one of them's half Scottish. I remember reading that.
Yeah, and but I don't think any of them started. So I watched them against Rangers on the opening day of the season, and they had I think all three of them started, and then none of them started last night in the derby. So he's probably going through the same processes what McCann is at the moment. You know, a slight change in formation, a slight change in system, new players, just trying to bed things in. So it'll be interesting to see how we go on Saturday. But the home form that we have certainly gives me confidence. And you're right, Laurie, to mention that game at Tannadice. That was the last time that we lost to them. But the last time that we lost to them at Rugby Park, 2016 was the last time we lost them at Rugby Park, other than the Scottish Cup time when they beat us in extra time, and that was a meaningless game before
Before the playoff.
Yeah,
And
4-2.
they were relegated as well, weren't they? They were already relegated.
Yeah, so that was the last defeat at Rugby Park. So, fingers crossed that continues, and we're at least getting a point on Saturday, and I think we can go all three.
I think we'll.
Same here.
I'm gonna go right for that, and not a McCann type performance. It's going to be a scrappy 1-0 win. I think we'll get our first clean sheet, our first 3 points of the season, and it's weird because I do feel as though, because of the way fans are already, I do feel as though it is a big game, because we're bottom with 0 points, the only team with no points in the league. They're just above us on 1 point. I feel that psychologically getting that 3 points will give us a big bounce going into the midweek game against St Mirren, and we all know what it's like under the lights at Rugby Park. It's a special place. So for me, I do feel it is a big game, but I don't think all's won and lost if we were to draw either. But yeah, a 1-0 win. And who's going to get the goal? I don't know. We'll give it to Mark O'Hara because he's going to start the game. He's going to get the goal. So
there you go.
So we'll see.
Right.
See if I'm right. So Laurie, are you going to give us an actual prediction then?
Let's go for one. I'll say 3-1 to ourselves. I'm gonna get some goals in it. So let's see.
And what about you?
I'm gonna give us three. I'll give us 3 different scorers as well. I'm gonna go for it. Hugo, Tom Laurie, 'cause I feel he deserves the goal. He should have got one against there. And Greg Kelty's going to score again.
Interesting.
I'll take it. I'll go 2-1. I can't see us keeping a clean sheet. I just don't see it. But
No.
I think we can win. So we'll go 2-1, and I'm not sure about both scorers, but Hugo, he's the man. He'll go on the score sheet because he usually does.
Great record, 11-22 as well. So long may that continue. Laurie, I'd rather get a ticket to your game than my game, but at the same time, if I go to my game, I'll be just as happy. So we'll move on to the ladies quickly there then. So Laurie, have you got the information now on the ladies today?
Yes, absolutely. They got a fantastic result, possibly a good inspiration for the men's team on Saturday, I guess. So they hosted Dundee United today, and again, it all went rather well. I mean, again, Jim Chapman's Bloomwhite Army have got themselves another victory, a 3-0 win with goals from Erin O'Brien, of course, a new signing to Kelly, and of course, she started the season rather well with 3 goals in 2 games, and then a double from Cara Gray. So really looking good for Jim Chapman's side. Of course, the women's team for the last 2 years have consistently played very, very well, but have just kind of fallen at the final hurdle when it comes to promotion to FWPL 1. But let's hope that this year is going to be the year. Honestly, massive congratulations to the girls there. And of course, if you ever are free on Sunday afternoons, try and get yourself along, because remember, free entry to all season ticket holders. But just bear in mind right now, the games are being spread around across Cumnock and Ardrossan. So just keep an eye on the club website and of course the club socials at Kilmarnock WFC to see where the team are playing, whilst Bibby Park reaches its completion, of course.
And also a big shout out to today's game because 15-year-old academy player Katie McDougall was named on the bench as well. So a big shout out there. It's really encouraging. The women's football has completely grown arms and legs in recent years across the whole country and down in England. But just in terms of our girls as well, they're consistently winning games. Just kind of get that promotion that they've been looking for. So like you say, Laurie, hopefully this year's the year. They've started well in the cup. It's like a league phase this year, and they've won 2 out of 2, and are currently sitting top of the table. So, like you said, Laurie, hopefully the men's team can take some inspiration and also get a clean sheet as well. Maybe Neil McCann should go and watch the ladies and see how they defend.
Absolutely. Although to be fair, I do think Jim Chapman's side are also quite attacking, almost in the same sort of way Neil McCann is. So, yeah. I mean, yeah.
But no, all good. Is there anything else, Callum? Do you want to give a shout out to your page, or do you want to? Is there anything in particular you want to shout out? Or is that you?
Not particular. I think, as you said, and you gave me a nice shout out in the X in the lead up to this. So yeah, it's at KillieData. If anybody wants to follow me, maybe my followers will go down after people have listened to me tonight. I don't know.
No.
But yeah, please.
No, you've been excellent.
And please, if anybody wants to interact with me, send me a message or whatever. I'm always open to that. Open to a good football debate anytime.
Yeah, it's great. Every time I open your page, I always think of us winning the League Cup when I see your profile. So at least I can see who you are now as a person. It's great. But no, it's been a pleasure having you on, Callum. Really enjoyed the insight you've given us, and obviously it's brilliant. So feel free to come on again in the future. Maybe later on in the season when there's more stats and we're higher up in the league as well.
Yeah, thanks, absolutely. Guys. And we can look back on this, I'm sure, and maybe there's certain bits where we go, oh, we've got that right, or oh, we've actually underestimated ourselves there. I think it'd be really good and really good insight into kind of how data works and the rationale behind it, and just a really interesting chat. So thank you again.
You guys, you're too kind. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'd be delighted to come on again. Okay, thank you very much for having me.
Great stuff. And Laurie will finish up. I'll let you finish as ever.
Okay. And of course, as we hope to get 3 points at the weekend against Dundee United, whatever happens, together we are Kelly, and of course, Mon the Kelly, as hopefully a good crowd cheers us on.
Mon the Kelly.